What's up guys, Eric Vasquez here from teachmetodesign.com, and in today's video I'll be sharing with you my top 5 tips for using clipping masks in Adobe Photoshop. Alright, so as I mentioned, today we're going to be focusing on clipping masks. Now for those of you guys who haven't used clipping masks and you're not quite sure what they are, don't sweat it, we're going to be covering all of that in this video. So I can promise you that once you learn how clipping masks work and how to use them, that it'll change the way that you design and the way that you use Photoshop. You'll see here starting off I just have a stock photo, and I went ahead and silhouetted the subject matter from the background, and if I turn on this red layer you can see what I mean. So we have the subject on one layer, a red layer in the middle, and then our original photograph on the very bottom. So let's say I wanted to fill this guy with a solid color. Well, I could use one of these lock features up here that says lock transparent pixels, and if I click that, I can then grab my brush and I can just paint in here with some green. And that's cool and that's all good and well, except for the fact that I'm completely obliterating and destroying my image over here. And that is basically known as being destructive or destructive editing. Okay, so one of the main advantages, let's go ahead and just unclick that lock layer. One of the main advantages of using a clipping mask is the fact that it's going to be non-destructive. And that's one of the takeaways that I want you guys to remember from this, is it's all about non-destructive editing. Okay, so we want to be able to keep our original image intact. So instead, if I just come down here and add a new layer, I can hold down the Control key and click on that layer, and then choose Create Clipping Mask. Now once I do that, I'm able to paint into the subject and get the exact same result, except this time I'm not ruining my original photo. You can see that I still have my silo layer and then I have this green layer on top, but it's confined to the borders or the boundaries of our subjects. Okay, so that's the basic way that clipping masks work, and that's why you want to use them. Okay, but if I hold down Control again and click on this layer, I can choose Release Clipping Mask. And now you'll see there's just, green paint everywhere. But if I apply that clipping mask, it's going to be confined only to the shape directly below it. Aside from just using clipping masks with a normal layer like I showed you guys before, you can also use clipping masks with adjustment layers. So if I come down here to the adjustment layer icon and I click on it, you'll see that you have pretty much all of the same options that you would normally have just by going to the Image Adjustments menu. The difference is, again, if I come here and let's say I apply a hue saturation adjustment, I can make changes to it, but again, I will be changing the properties of my original image, and we don't really want to do that. We want to do this in a non-destructive way. So a better way to do it would be to use the adjustment layers down here, click on hue saturation, and then hold down the Control key and click on the layer and choose Create Clipping Mask. Now I have all of the same options. I can make this layer less saturated just by moving this slider, and not only is it not affecting the background, it's only affecting the silo layer, but it's also non-destructive. So I'm not messing up this original layer. And you can see here, even if I check off the colorize option and make this guy completely green or blue or purple or whatever, it's not affecting the background. Alright, so all I have to do is kind of toggle the visibility of that layer on and off, and you can see how that works. Now, what's even cooler about this is the fact that even after I have a clipping mask applied, I can select my silo layer, come back to the adjustment layer, and if I add another one called black and white, I've just added a second clipping mask, and I didn't have to do anything because I applied it in between my original layer and the existing clipping mask. So that's a really handy feature that you can do. You can add multiple clipping masks, and you can even reorder them, either by clicking and dragging them, or by holding the Command key and pressing the left bracket to move the layer down, or the right bracket with the Command key to move it up. And sometimes the order of your clipping layers is important, so that's going to be really handy for you guys to know. We can use clipping masks with adjustment layers and normal layers. However, There's another important thing that I want to show you guys, and that's all of the different ways that you can add clipping masks to an image. Now, of course, you just saw me demonstrate the first way, where if I click on an adjustment layer, I can hold down the Control key and click on the layer and then choose Create Clipping Mask. And that's fine, you can do it that way if you want to, but there's a few other ways that you can do this. So let's just go ahead and choose Release Clipping Mask for a second. And if I check off Colorize on my Hue Saturation box, you'll see that it's colorizing my entire image, which we don't really want. I could just click the Control key and choose Create Clipping Mask again, but an even easier way to do that is to move my cursor between the two layers and hold down the Alt Option key. And you can see my cursor actually changes to this downward pointing arrow with a white box. So now if I click, I've just applied a clipping mask. Alright, and if I do that again, I'll remove the clipping mask. So yet another way that I could do this is to hold down the Alt Option key before I even click on the Adjustment Layer option at the bottom of the Layers palette. And now if I choose black and white, you'll see this time, because I held down the Alt Option key, that I actually get this dialog pop-up box. Now on this box here, we have the option to check off this, which says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask. Go ahead and hit OK, and once again we have our clipping mask applied. So that's yet another way that you can add them. And lastly, let's go ahead and add another black and white adjustment layer. And I think that this is more specific to adjustment layers. You don't really have this option when you're working with regular layers, but you'll notice up here in the properties and all of these options that we have here, there's a small icon here that looks very similar to our cursor when we hold down the Alt Option key between these two layers. And if I hover over that for a second, you'll see that it says, this adjustment affects all layers below, and then in parentheses, click to clip layer. So I can also do that. So there are multiple ways that you can add and remove clipping masks in Adobe Photoshop, and you've also seen that they can be used with regular layers and adjustment layers. We can also add multiple instances or different types of adjustment layers, all with clipping masks, and change the order. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and change the blending mode of the adjustment layer to soft light, and then maybe reduce the opacity a bit. And you'll see that it actually creates a nice contrast effect if I just turn the eye on and off there. And again, it's not affecting my background at all. And I could select my silo layer, come back down to the adjustment layer icon, and add yet another adjustment layer that will automatically have a clipping mask applied to it. And for this one, I can just desaturate the image a little bit. So let's move on. Now, clipping masks are great for applying effects and things like that to images, but they can also be used to place images inside of a shape or inside of text. So let me show you guys what I mean. I'm going to grab this other stock image here that I have, and I'm just going to drag it inside of my document. And right away you can see that this background image got dragged inside of our figure here. Okay? And that's the basic idea. I mean, you can see that it has a clipping mask applied to it, but let's just go ahead and remove that for a second. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt Option key and hover my cursor between these two layers to remove that clipping mask. Because what I actually want to show you guys is something a little bit different. So I'm going to move my background down here, click on the layer while holding the Control key, and choose Convert to Smart Object. And you'll see why I'm doing that in just a second. Now, press Command or Control plus the T key on the keyboard, and that will bring up your free transform command. Now I'm going to hold down Shift and the Alt Option key and just scale this up a bit. Alright, and I'll zoom out so that I can kind of see what I'm doing. Alright, and then I'm just going to go ahead and hit Enter. Now because I made this a smart object, I can apply what is called a smart filter. So I'll come up here to the filter menu and just quickly choose Blur, Gaussian Blur, and let's just blur the background a bit. Okay, I'm going to move it up to about 9 pixels or so and hit OK. And now I'm going to create another new layer on top of this. So just go ahead and create an empty layer, and I'm going to grab my text tool, and from here we can just type out a couple of words. Let's just say London. I'm pretty sure that's a London skyline, but I'm just going to move this up a bit. Okay, scale it up as well. And you'll now see that we have a couple of layers. So we've got our subject in the foreground, who is slightly desaturated with a little bit of a contrast adjustment applied. Then behind it we have our text, and behind that we have our blurred background. But let's say I wanted to have it so that this background is only visible inside of the text, similarly to the way that we used it when we first brought it in and it was inside of our image. Well, I'm going to move the background layer just above the type layer, and then hold down the Alt Option key in between the two layers, and you'll notice again that my cursor changes. Now I can click, and now my background is only inside of the text layer. Okay, so this is the same technique. We're still using clipping masks, but you can apply this so that you have an image inside of a shape or text. Okay, so you saw how it looks inside of our figure, and now you guys can see how it looks inside of our text. But for now, let's go ahead and remove that, bring our background down so that we just have our type. Now I can select my background layer once again. I'm going to come down to the adjustment layer icon and choose hue saturation, and then I'm just going to desaturate the background image slightly. Okay, so that it kind of matches our subject a little bit. You don't have to go too far, but I want to try to at least match the temperature and the mood of the image. Now in this case I wouldn't really need to add a clipping mask because there's nothing else below this. But if I had several images and more layers than this in a file, well, it would totally make sense to use that to make sure that I am targeting the layers that I want to target. So that will bring me to my next tip. I want to show you really quickly another way that you can use clipping masks. And this is a little bit more advanced, but once you guys understand how this works, you'll just have so many more options in Photoshop, especially when it comes to doing photo compositing work. Alright, so if that's something that interests you guys, you'll definitely want to practice and get used to using clipping masks. In this example, I have my subject, my text, and my background. I'm going to hold down the Control key and click on the Silo layer and just convert this to a smart object so that I can apply a smart filter. Okay, and what I want to do is just come up here to Filter, and maybe let's just sharpen and use an unsharp mask. Okay, now you'll see instantly that that brings out just a crazy amount of detail in our subject. Alright, it really brings out a lot of the graininess and like the grittiness of the subject. So I'm going to hit OK. And the cool thing about that, just like our background layer, is that because these are smart filters, we can double click the effect and we can change the parameters. Alright, so again, we're not committed to it. It's completely non-destructive. If I were to just apply that to a regular layer instead of a smart object, I would not be able to modify those settings once they're applied. Alright, so from here, I'm going to hold down the Shift key once my Silo layer is selected and click on the top adjustment layer. So you should now have these three layers selected. Now from here, I'm going to press Command G to put them into a group folder, and I'll just go ahead and call that Silo. Alright, now we certainly don't have to, but you can put your other layers in group folders as well, and go ahead and do that just to keep things organized. It may also be useful to see this for the demonstration. Alright, but if you put images into a group folder, or a bin essentially, you can apply adjustment layers to the entire folder. So let's say for a second I had my text in here. Maybe I can add another image in here as well. Alright, so I'm just going to open up another stock photo. Okay, maybe I can grab some smoke or some clouds or something like that. I'm just going to grab this image real quick and bring this in. Okay, and I don't want it there, so I'm just going to move it below, make it a smart object. Alright, and scale it up a bit. Okay, and then let's see what happens if I just maybe change the blending mode of this to something else. Alright, so if I make it multiply, it pretty much gets rid of all the white, which is fine. And I can actually use this as a clipping mask and place it inside of my text. We can add some smoke in here, and we can move it around. Okay, so you can do that, which we just kind of covered in the last part. But what I want to show you guys instead is what happens if I drop this into a group folder. Okay, I may also want to try to invert the image, so let's come up to Image, Adjustments, Invert. Alright, and now I can change the blending mode from multiply to screen so that we see the white part instead of the black. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Alt Option key and click on the adjustment layer icon at the bottom and choose Levels. Now just like before, we'll check off this box that says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask. And now I'm just going to bring in the left slider a little bit towards the center to get some more contrast out of the smoke. And we can probably also lower the opacity a bit as well. Now, with my silo layer selected, I can hold down the Alt Option key, click on an adjustment layer, and let's just choose one of these options here, Hue Saturation. Alright, again, check off this box and hit OK. And now if I choose Colorize, you can see that it's actually changing everything inside of this group folder. Alright, so if I wanted to make everything in there red, this kind of orangish yellow color, I can do that. But the reason that you're seeing it applied to this whole thing is because there is still some black in our smoke. Okay, but if I turn that off for a sec, you guys can see it's definitely affecting our figure here, but we don't really want it to affect the smoke. Okay, so in that case, I would just move the smoke out of that folder, and that would take care of that. But I actually kind of liked the way that this looked inverted and set to multiply instead. Alright, and then maybe I can actually move this below my text. And let's just move it down a bit. Alright, and invert the image. Maybe go back to screen and see how that looks. Alright, so we just have a little bit of fog here down at the bottom. But as you can see, it's easy to add adjustment layers into entire folders. But I'd actually like to find a different image so that I can show you guys this effect in action. Okay, so let me just go ahead and grab maybe one of these other images instead. I can grab this image of the smoke, make a copy of it by pressing Command J, and then I'll grab my wand tool by pressing W and click anywhere on the black, choose Select Similar, and then we can invert this by pressing Command Shift I and click on the Layer Mask tool, the Layer Mask icon rather, so that now we basically have our clouds by themselves. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just drag these in really quick. I know they look a little bit choppy because the edges are kind of gnarly, but that's okay. This is just for the demonstration. Alright, so if I drop this back into my group folder layer, now you guys can see kind of what I was going for. And this is basically just to demonstrate that you can apply an adjustment layer with a clipping mask to an entire group folder. Okay, so this can be really useful when you want adjustments and things like that to affect only certain parts of an image. So let's go ahead and make that a smart object real quick. And then I can blur these a little bit just because the edges are bothering me. And we'll just go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. And then I'll blur this smoke quite a bit. And maybe even see how it looks in front of our subject. Alright, but still with the same adjustments applied. Okay, so now I can kind of move these around, scale them up however you want. And then once I zoom out, you guys will be able to see that that same kind of gold yellow color that we have applied to our subject is now also applied to the clouds. Alright, but let's say we didn't want to go and make it that weird color. We could just use another adjustment layer instead. Alright, so I'll just poke out the eyeball real quick, select my Silo group folder layer, and instead let's try curves. Alright, so you'll see because I added it here in between the existing clipping mask and the folder that it already has a clipping mask applied to it, and I can easily just tweak the curve settings. Alright, so I can get a little more contrast out of it, kind of play around a little bit and see how it looks. And if I move my cursor in between the group folder and this clipping mask, it will remove it, and then that curves adjustment will be applied to the entire image instead of just what's inside of the folder. So those are my top 5 tips for working with clipping masks in Adobe Photoshop. I wanted to do something, a little bit different but kind of in-depth for you guys. Alright, so I do actually want to do one last thing here with our image because I accidentally just scrapped those clouds, which I think would actually look cool if we used them in a different way. So I'm just going to bring those back in really quick here and convert that to a smart object, and maybe we'll change the blending mode to screen. Now, like I've been saying all along throughout this video, guys, it's all about non-destructive editing so that you can retain the quality of your original images. And that's really the best way to work when you're doing stuff in Photoshop. So let's just go ahead and add a levels adjustment, make it a clipping mask. We can just add a little bit of contrast there. And the great thing is, like all along, is that any of these, clipping masks and adjustment layers, they've all got masks applied to them. And if they don't, well, you can just add one. So in this example, I'm just going to quickly kind of paint out a few of these clouds, but let some of them overlap the subject a little bit just to create a little more depth in our image. All right, and then from there we can kind of just call it done. It's a done deal. All good. All right, so by doing that, we're adding a lot more depth, and we've been able to do everything in a non-destructive way. So I think this is looking pretty cool. I'm just going to move the smoke layer below these two top adjustment layers here. And then while we're at it, let's just go ahead and add one more thing just for effect. So I'm just going to bring in these embers here, make them a smart object, and scale them up by pressing Command T, and then holding down the Alt and Shift keys and dragging outwards from any of the four corners. And then I'm going to change the blending mode to screen, and let's move it down a few layers and see how this looks if we place it maybe behind or in front of our text. All right, just for added effect, I think it gives it a little more energy, a little more motion and excitement. So something like this, guys, is, it didn't take us too long, maybe about a half an hour or so, but I think it covered quite a bit of material. So we created a cool image, and in the process, I shared with you guys my top 5 tips. So hopefully you guys learned a lot from this video. If so, please give us a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And be sure to also go ahead and sign up for our email list, guys, and be the first to know anytime some new content drops. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.